I don't know. Sometimes he has some good takes.
Here's my take. I was recently in Shenzhen, the heart of China's industrial machine, talking to one of that country's legendary businessmen. I asked him about the Iran war, and his response surprised me. He said, quote, "For us, Trump's attack on Iran is less consequential than his threat to attack Greenland. When he did that to America's oldest allies, I knew that Europe would not follow America's approach to China," unquote. In the US, Trump's periodic insults hurled toward Europe tend to get treated as routine tantrums, part of the reality TV show that is now the White House. But in Europe, the accumulation of abuse has reached a tipping point. Daniel De Petris recently wrote in The Spectator, a conservative and usually ardently pro-American magazine, "The war in Iran has forced Europe to grow a spine. European leaders are no longer interested in dropping to their knees and groveling to stay on Trump's good side."
Huh.
Europe is moving from words to actions.
I mean, no, that's true. I see that. Actually, what was it? It was the Italy. It was Italy's prime minister. I forgot her name, but I know she's a woman. But yes, Italy's prime minister, who's low-key I'll be real with you, huge supporter of Trump. I mean, at the White House, she was glazing him and all that good stuff. So she was a real supporter of Trump. And because of this Iran war, she low-key separated herself from Trump. She's pretty much saying what Trump is doing is wrong and it's hurting the EU states. And, him trying to drag us into this war is wrong and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it is changing. Like, even the EU countries that were in support of us, even their minds are changing about how they feel or about, I guess, bending the knee when it comes to American power. They're thinking that, maybe we do need to go more towards China, which would be a terrible idea for them. But they're so mad at us, they might just commit to that terrible idea.
The EU's Rearm Europe Readiness 2030 plan is to invest some 800 billion euros in defense in the coming years. The old model was that America took care of European security and Europeans spent generously on American arms. Now, Europeans want more of their money to stay at home, to build European firms and supply chains, and thus gain strategic autonomy from Washington. The same logic is spreading beyond defense. The European Payments Initiative is building a continent-wide alternative to Visa and MasterCard. European institutions are seeking alternatives to SWIFT, PayPal, and other US-dominated financial platforms. France has moved gold reserves from New York to Paris. Politicians in Germany and Italy have debated whether their countries should do the same. European governments are looking for alternatives to American software, fearing that US firms might one day be ordered to cut off critical services. This can all be dismissed as posturing, but let's remember, Europe is collectively the world's second largest economy with the second most widely used reserve currency. Its actions matter.
True.
Perhaps the most revealing change is on the European right. Anti-Americanism used to be a doctrine of the left. Paris intellectuals, student radicals, anti-war parties. The right was instinctively Atlanticist, and Europe's populist right once saw Trump as its patron saint. But Greenland, Iran, and Trump's general contempt for Europe have made him politically toxic across the political spectrum. The Washington Post reported that figures such as...
I mean, let's be real, guys. It's well-deserved. I'm not going to lie to you. Usually I hate being on NATO's side on this, but bro, we started a war that caused an energy crisis for them. They're paying more in gas and electric. And we just told them, oh, well, sorry, I guess you got to go there and fight a conflict that you want to know parts in. And if you don't do it, you're a bunch of cowards. Oh, yeah. And I know we started the war. I know we made the mess, but come on and help us out and clean it. It's like, bro, what type of dickhead ass move is that? That's a bit distasteful, guys.
Nigel Farage, Marine Le Pen, Giorgia Meloni, and Germany's AfD party have all been distancing themselves from Trump and American policy. Even in Hungary, J.D. Vance's speeches for Viktor Orban may have hurt Orban's electoral prospects. It goes beyond Europe. In Canada, Prime Minister Mark Carney has explicitly set out to reduce his country's dependence on the US market. He has already signed more than 20 economic and security deals, including with China, to grow exports beyond the US. Canadians, for their part, are buying less American and vacationing less in the US. Europe and Canada are not about to embrace China. They have serious conflicts with Beijing over Ukraine, subsidies, electric vehicles, critical minerals, market access. But both will play nicer with China where they can. They will hedge. They'll deal with Washington when they must, Beijing when it suits them, and others whenever possible. A recent foreign affairs essay by Chinese scholar Da Wei argues that for Beijing, the great new geopolitical fact is there is now a deep Europe-America divide ready to be exploited. In Asia, America's allies have been hit harder than anyone. More than 80% of the oil and gas that passed through the Strait of Hormuz went to Asia. Now many countries on that continent are reeling from their worst energy crisis in half a century, perhaps in history. As a result, American allies like Japan and South Korea have had to go hat in hand to adversaries like Russia and Iran to negotiate for enough fuel to keep the lights on at home.
Yep. I mean, that's why sanctions was lift off of Russian oil. Now they're selling what? They went from selling oil at 40 a barrel to $90 a barrel. So they're making money. I mean, shoot, China, Japan, they have their deals with Iran. So it's kind of effed up because we're kind of pushing these guys to actually work with our enemies.
Adding insult to injury, they have had to endure abuse from Trump, who has denounced them because, despite never having been consulted, they have not eagerly jumped to join America's war. Many of them are now in talks with Beijing about energy security and green technology. One of the recurring questions about Donald Trump's foreign policy has been, how permanent are its effects? Could the United States recover from the loss of trust with its allies? As we can see, countries have started making long-term policy shifts, and these will soon take on a life of their own. They realized that they had entrusted their security and well-being to Washington, and it has used this dependence to squeeze them hard. So they've decided to buy insurance to protect themselves from an unreliable America.
Like, let's see, Saudi Arabia, they worked out a defense deal with Pakistan. So if anybody attacks Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, they might strike you because, Pakistan got nukes. So they're over here trying to work with other nuclear powers to ensure their safety.
And who can blame them? Yesterday, President Trump canceled a U.S. delegation's scheduled trip to Pakistan for a potential second round of talks with Iran, claiming there was infighting in the Iranian leadership and that nobody knows who is in charge. On the other side, the top Iranian negotiator has questioned whether the U.S. is, quote, truly serious about diplomacy, unquote.
Literally.
This all comes amid a fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran and a continuing blockade of the Strait of Hormuz by both sides. Joining me now to discuss this stalemate is a man with deep expertise in military strategy and tactics, retired U.S. Navy Admiral William McRaven. He has a new book out, Duty, Honor, Country, and Life, a tribute to the American spirit. Admiral, welcome. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to first ask you, just so that people understand, what is the situation as far as you can tell, and you are on the outside, at the Strait of Hormuz? Because, in a sense, the Iranians say that they have blockaded it, and the Americans say, no, we have blockaded it just outside the Strait of Hormuz. There are reports that Iranian tankers are getting by through a very intriguing scenario where they essentially hug the coastline of Iran, which is not international waters, and then they hug the coastline of Pakistan, which is the next neighboring country, and then hug the coastline of India all the way to get to an Indian refinery. Is that plausible? And as far as you can tell, what is the state of play? Are all ships blocked? Are non-Iranian ships blocked? How would you describe it?
Yeah, well, first, Fareed, great to be with you. Let me say at the outset, however, that I think I'm not a big fan of President Trump, but I am very happy that he and the First Lady and the members of his cabinet and the members of the White House Correspondents' Dinner are safe. Thanks. And that the Secret Service and law enforcement just did an incredible job under a very chaotic situation. So very thankful for that. To get to your question, I mean, the fact of the matter is we're at an impasse here. From the Iranian standpoint, you talked about coming to the table. I don't think the Iranians want to come to the table, the negotiating table, until President Trump lifts the blockade. And of course, the blockade really is about blockading, any and all cargo oil that is coming into or out of Iran and frankly, globally. So Trump feels like the blockade is his leverage. And of course, the Iranians won't come to the table until the blockade is lifted. If I were advising President Trump, I would say, look, take this opportunity to expand and open the ceasefire, make it go a little longer. Tell the Iranians that you will lift the blockade if they will open the Straits of Hormuz. I think that would get them to the negotiating table. Once they're at the negotiating table, then you have time to be able to deal with all the other issues, the enrichment of the uranium, etc. But until you can get them at the table, then I don't think we're going to make much progress here. And so lift the blockade, because you can always flip a switch and put the blockade back in play.
So in a sense, isn't it fair to say the Iranians are betting that they can take the pain more than the Americans can? And I don't know, historically, it seems to me when we've been in these situations, Vietnam, Iraq, that's when for the country involved, for the regime involved, it's existential. They are willing to take more pain than the United States, for whom it is not as existential.
Yeah, absolutely. Maureen Dowd had a great piece in the Times this week where she talked about the O. Henry story, The Ransom of Red Chief, where a couple of hapless crooks kidnap a 10-year-old boy, and then they find out he's more trouble than he's worth, and they have to return him, and they have to pay $250 to the father. I think we are in a very similar situation right here. When we talk about escalation dominance and who holds all the cards, it's difficult to say we hold all the cards now. The fact of the matter is the Iranians can hold the Straits of Hormuz at risk because of the fast attack boats. They still have the drones. They still have a fair number of ballistic missiles. But they can also hold the Bab el-Mandab at risk through the Houthis. So the Iranians, I think, can put up with the pressure a little bit longer than President Trump can, because the global economy is suffering greatly, as you pointed out in the first part of your piece here.
All right. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get right back into our guy, Myron. No, it really does suck, though. Make sure you double tap that screen, like the video. But this war really does suck for us. I mean, higher prices, allies going towards enemies, enemies making more money than ever. And I'm just so confused on why people truly think this is working out for us. And like even my own guys, all my guys can tell me who support the war is that, well, you got to understand we're hurting China and Russia. And I'm just like, bro, what you mean? China's still getting their energy. They're still getting their oil from Iran. And Russia's making more money than ever because of this war. And now Iran has power over the Strait of Hormuz. It's like, what is working out for us? Please explain. Like, you can't point not to one metric. And if you do, you're wrong about it. So